When it comes to gaming, one of the industry's strongest staples is that of espionage. And while the market now these days is full of different games about spies and international assassins, one of the first to break out was Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear was a series that I had always heard about but never had a chance to play. Eventually, I decided to take the plunge and try out the lauded series. And after playing the Twin Snakes, I could say that my time spent with the game was a bittersweet experience. On one hand, the story and presentation is one of the best I have ever seen for a video game. Yet on the other, Metal Gear Solid might have the most frustrating gameplay ever created. It's rare when a game has such a bitter divide with itself and as such, hampers the experience. There are two things you should know going in. First, if you get a chance to get this game by itself on disc only, don't. Without the manual, you'll experience a very steep learning curve. And second, if you haven't played or read up on the first two games, Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, you will be lost in the story. I cannot attest to the PlayStation version, but the GameCube version has a history report on the past two games. But even when reading those, I got lost a few times. And one more thing before I continue on. Metal Gear Solid is a story-driven series, and because of that, I may talk about some spoilers. I will do my best to refrain from blowing anything too big. However, it should be known that if you haven't played the previous two games, you should before continuing on with this review. Metal Gear Solid follows the story of Solid Snake, a retired Special Forces member who is approached by his former commander to assist in a terrorist crisis. But Snake finds that things aren't as they appear and that there is a lot more going on here. I'll stop now to avoid major spoilers. Just know that there is a lot more to the plot. The story to Metal Gear is impressive, original and downright amazing at times. There is a famous tagline from critics on movies, books, and even games saying, "There are twists and turns around every corner." And usually that isn't the case. But with Metal Gear Solid, you should accept the fact that whenever you see a cutscene beginning to play, you should brace yourself for a surprise. And there are a lot of cutscenes in this game. While the story is impressive, the voice acting is a different story. Most, if not all, the actors overact and delivered ham-fisted lines. This is most apparent with the characters Meryl and Octagon. This leads to another problem the game suffers from: overly annoying characters. One can only imagine how amazing the experience could have been if the impressive story was supported by equally impressive voice work. And one final note on the story before I move on. While the story is amazing, it's unfortunately bombasted with some very preachy moments, even to the point of feeling like B-quality propaganda that is forced upon POWs. The two main messages that the game relentlessly forces upon you is that anything and everything that is nuclear is the root of evil, and anything remotely dealing with war is bad. Now, I don't necessarily embrace these two concepts, but how MGS goes about it feels like the developers are acting like they're the first people ever to bring these two subjects up. Or, better yet, feel more like a second grader's presentation to their class and less like a thoughtful anti-message like what was seen in movies like Full Metal Jacket, Apocalypse Now, and Platoon. There is even a moment in the game when an untrained new recruit who's been in the military for the total of a few weeks gets hit by sniper fire and for no apparent reason blurts out that war is evil and useless. It would have had a far more profound effect if that line was spoken later on when a seasoned warrior dies at a point in the game who spent their entire life on the battlefield. Not only is Metal Gear Solid overly preachy, but it's done so by the worst possible characters. The gameplay is simply atrocious. The Twin Snakes is built off the Metal Gear Solid 2 engine, meaning that all the gameplay advancements in that game have been brought back to this remastered edition. But even with the new improvements, the game is still a discombobulated mess. The worst part of the gameplay is the broken camera system. Instead of having the game entirely in first person or third person, the camera sits in a fixed overhead perspective. And while there is a peek and lean feature in the game that everyone got so crazy about back when this first came out in '98, there were numerous times I was seen by enemy guards and killed simply because I couldn't look where I needed to. The camera isn't the only problem, however. Enemy AI is possibly the dumbest AI I've ever seen. You simply need to leave the room for the guards to forget you exist. They're that stupid. At least they'll notice if one of their own is down on the ground. Also, the supposed revolutionary stealth mechanics that everyone screamed their heads about is nothing to really get excited about. You either have to avoid line of sight from your enemies or hide in a cardboard box. That's pretty much it. The game's visuals are another highlight. The cutscenes have all been redone with the Metal Gear Solid 2 engine, and redirected by the director of the action horror film Frosses, whose name I cannot pronounce, giving a more cinematic flair that draws players deeper into the story. I would say that the game's presentation is perfect, but unfortunately the in-game menu system is a chaotic mess. Apparently no one told the developers how to make a pause menu. It's messy, and only by the end of the game will you get a hang of it. Even then, it has problems. Metal Gear Solid, the Twin Snakes, will last you a long time, running around 12 to 16 hours depending on if you like to take your time or not. And that is even extended if you choose to listen to the atmospheric, optional briefing in the main menu. And thankfully, there is a movie mode which allows you to watch all the cutscenes in the game, so if you're like me and hated the gameplay, you'll love this feature. There is also an alternate ending if you give up Octagon or Meryl, and unlockables if you complete the game on hard mode and complete other requirements. If you put the time into it, the Twin Snakes has a lot to offer. There are a couple of ways of getting this game. It originally came out exclusively for the PlayStation, and the remastered port, Metal Gear Solid, the Twin Snakes, was released exclusively on the GameCube. The Twin Snakes is without a doubt the best way to fully experience the story of Shadow Moses. However, you should be warned, if your focus as a gamer is less about presentation and more about experiencing the evolution of the gameplay as it has been developed throughout its sequels, then you don't want to get the Twin Snakes. Because it is built off Metal Gear Solid 2's engine, there is absolutely no difference or improvements if you continue off with the second game. So if you start off with the Twin Snakes, just know that you'll continue with the sequel only for its story. Metal Gear Solid is one of the best stories involving espionage I have ever played. Its cutscenes are beautiful, and the action-focused moments never get old. I can easily recommend this game for its story, but that's it. I can in no good conscience recommend this game for its terrible voice acting, over-preachiness, and downright horrible gameplay. If you're looking for a great story, then you should give Metal Gear Solid a try. However, if you're all about gameplay and gameplay only, then keep clear of this mess.